two of the most important issues that we face as an industry. And the first one is affordability. And you read that right. In 2019, 1 in 5 households in the United States could only afford a home less than $100,000.
The current math does not work in terms of being able to get into a home. But until we shift our mindset from a product-focused mindset to a system-focused mindset, this problem can never be addressed.
There's a reason you guys are in this room. It's because you want to make sure you're either convincing yourself you should be going down this way or finding that better way to sharpen your pencil and keep doing it more, or faster, leaner, whatever it may be.
It's an anonymous survey. Really, how often do you show up at a job and the labor isn't there? If Ford published this, the National Home Builder published this in their annual report, that'd be a scary thing. There's plenty of work out there.
My advice to you, if you're willing to accept it, would be think of it as an evolution, not a revolution.
I'm Tim Costello. You're going to see a bunch of me because I'm going to be here every single time you come into this room. Aren't you? Come on, are we excited about that? All right, woo! We're going to begin talking about justifying utilizing more factory-built components. I promised you our three presenters. We got Lincoln Judd from Simpson Strong Tie, and of course Simpson's always out there, pushing the boundary for factory-built components and systems. What's the name of the system? My favorite system in the world, the one that cuts and stays.
The Easy Frame?
Yes. How many of you have anybody seen the Easy Frame system in action? I think this is the coolest thing in the world. We got Keller from MiTek, who, they're the kind of leading company really helping us design, actually having the design tool and the manufacturing tools to be able to do all this cool modular and offsite type construction stuff. And then it's got Michaud from CertainTeed, and you're going to kind of bring some of the external paneling systems, installation, some of the other stuff to the table. So we'll kind of got three completely different views of how to use these components. And Mike, you're going to color commentary all the way through it, aren't you?
Yeah, sure. Yep. So I'll give you 2 minutes real quick on my background, if that's okay. I spent my first 16 years of my career with Pulte. Growing up on the construction side, ended up in the kind of regional operations side of the business until the meltdown. And then I spent my next 10 years at Beazer, operations, purchasing, product development. And then I was lucky enough to go spend 4 years behind the scenes with the largest framing contractor on the East Coast, who framed about 5,000 homes a year, trimmed 10,000 residentially, and then had about 30 commercial jobs around the country.
I'm going to give you 3 slides. That's it. And we're going to turn it over to the presenters. And to me, it's the 3 slides that represent 2 of the most important issues that we face as an industry. And the first one is affordability. This is a chart from the National Association of Home Builders. And what it shows is for the 100 million households in the United States, it basically shows you what percentage of the households in the United States can afford what home. So if you look at this chart, that very first line says 21%, and this is in 2019, 21% of all the households in the United States could only afford a home under $100,000. And you read that right. In 2019, 1 in 5 households in the United States could only afford a home less than $100,000. But what it left for production home builders at that time is about 36% of all households. It's about 45 million households. And we don't include the ones at the very top because that's really the luxury and custom market, right? It's not really production home builder market. These are multi-million-dollar homes. And that's always kind of a 5%-ish, roughly US market. So about 36% of all the homes in 2019, 45 million households in all, so a really big market, big market. If you go to 2025, we have gone from 36% of the market to 27% of the market and only 37 million homes. And we've lost 8 million households of affordability to production building. And you start now to look, 70% of all households in the United States cannot afford even a production home. So our markets are shrinking rapidly. And it's because of 3 key issues. Obviously, interest rates have a play, but it's the fundamental underlying cost of the real estate, interest rates, and insurance. And by the time you lay all 3 of those on top, the cost of owning a home is simply pushing now almost 3/4 of American households out of the production builder market space. The other issue is labor availability. It continues to get worse. It's not getting better. I was just talking to a Phoenix contractor today. I'm from Texas, so I know 64% of our trades are undocumented in Texas. We are having trouble with them showing up to work. We're having trouble with attendance. We're having trouble with recruiting labor in Texas. In Phoenix, what I heard is they're able to build at this rate right now but if we go back to standard building rates, they will not be able to keep up with the production. So the kind of downturn in the Phoenix market is actually enabling them to deal with the labor shortage at this period of time. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lincoln.
As was mentioned, my name is Lincoln Judd. I've been with Simpson Strong-Tie only for about a year. I want to thank all of you for being here. You know, this is a wonderful opportunity by which we get to gather together and discuss what is important to all of us. And that is the future of home building. And the second is affordability. Why is this such a passion of mine? Well, I think what is brought around there is I am a little personal note is I am a father of 4 daughters. All 4 of those daughters have recently been married in the last 7 years. And I have an expectation of their husbands to provide a house by which they can build a home in. The Simpson partnership and what Simpson is doing long-term to be able to help builders in the short term and in the long term. I'm going to make a bold statement to begin. One is a lot of people say factory build is the future, but factory built is the now. And a lot of builders may not be ready for what is to come or what is even maybe available today. But are they on the journey to be able to prepare themselves to get there? And I think that's where Simpson is involved and why I joined them is they are willing and they are wanting to help builders to either get onto the journey or support that journey as they move forward. So in terms of rebuilding this American dream, it's definitely going to require a different type of framework. As Tim alluded to, there's very little homes that are affordable to the majority of the population. Some of the data that I focused on or singled out, he showed that the median home price in the U.S. is around $460,000. About 76% of the U.S. population cannot afford a home greater than $400,000. So kind of sink in, if the median price is $460,000 and 76% of the country can't afford a home over $400,000, something has to be done. So the bottom line is math doesn't work. The current math does not work in terms of being able to get into a home. And that is driven by what Tim even alluded to, which is labor costs or labor shortages, material costs, and then there's significant inefficiencies in the way that traditional construction is typically done. The piece I really want to focus on is the inefficiency piece. I want to focus on what really drives cost. It's very easy for builders to look at material costs. And I know that I have a lot of segments of my team that have a lot of discussions regarding the price of a piece of hardware. But until we shift our mindset from a product-focused mindset to a system-focused mindset, this problem can never be addressed, right? If we focus on materials from a Simpson perspective, I need a piece of hardware or I need hardware to, I need to figure out how to optimize my lateral loads. That is a different discussion than I need a piece of hardware, right? It becomes about optimization and overcoming the inefficiencies that exist. And one thing that you can see as inefficiency, if the average build cycle today throughout the country that we found out is about 120 days is what it's extended to. If you had a way that you could reduce your build cycle by 30 to 50%, what would that do to your equity? Cost of capital. And then how would that impact your margins? So if we were consistently trying to drive down margins through material costs or through labor, specifically direct labor in terms of the traditional stick-built construction, we will never get there. Right? But if you want to drive real margin, it's about investing your capital and your equity in a different way.
If you want to kind of envision what's possible, you said that the average build time right now is 120 days to build a single home. I've been in a manufactured home factory where in 24 hours with 100 people, they built 12 homes from start to finish in a 24-hour cycle. The first stud, cabinets, drywall, roofing, siding, appliances, flooring, everything. 12 homes in 24 hours.
If we want to reclaim margin, we have to improve the cycle time. And through factory-built systems, you can reduce that time, but you also address the major issues within construction. You certainly can drive a higher return on your investment. Through some tests and through other methodologies, that panelized systems can actually help you regain or improve almost up to 15% return on your investment. And Modular has been able to show that you can get an additional 25% return. But let's get away from a little bit of the hypothetical. There's a company that's helping shift that question of what does it cost, and more importantly, to what does it save. challenge yourself to start thinking about what is it going to save me. But there's a company called Tecton. Tecton produces standardized kit of parts delivered onto the site, and it's all created off-site. What they've been able to do or show in that process is your typical rough time frame, between framing to HVAC, and most places between 60 to 100 days. On the projects that they have utilized the Tecton system, there has been some jobs built and constructed this way. They've been able to reduce the rough time to 10 days, 6 times faster. So now if you can do that with other components, a part of the house, they're putting in components for plumbing, for electrical, for windows, and they're being able to ship it without damage and things like that. I call this a build method evaluation scorecard. The sample scorecard is just a hypothetical data point. The colors just represent specific build methodology, what score is high and what score is low in relation to weak or high risk or to strong and low risk. On the spider graph, you can actually see the different methods, stick built, panelized, and modular. So the orange, wherever it touches that cycle risk, that would be a 5, like on modular, labor availability of 5, cost efficiency of 5, code alignment a 4, and then logistics. It does score a little bit lower because you have to plan for that. But the important part here is that you can start to take a data-driven approach to better evaluate methods that are available. I mentioned at the very beginning that this is a journey. My responsibility within Simpson is largely helping our customers to be able to take advantage of digital data. The majority of the industry is still designing and detailing in a 2D world. Everything related to almost modular construction requires a 3D environment. So if you're in a 2D environment today and you try to jump to modular construction, you got to take some steps before you ever make that jump. So something that we partner with a lot of companies on is being able to help them to get into the BIM world, because utilizing BIM construction or design methods will open the door to future opportunities or developments in innovation. It's an enabler. It's certainly not an end result, right? In a 3D model, you do have more intelligent data. You're able to plan better. You're able to coordinate better. It allows for upfront collaboration all before the project even starts. You're able to understand your materials better. So if it's early on in the journey, if you want to better understand the cost of building a home, it'd be great to get closer to exactimating than estimating within your process. And a 3D model, what we call a digital twin, will help you do that. I've talked enough about these pieces, but Simpson Strong Tie, why is it uniquely positioned to help you as builders to be able to take that next step? We've been in the industry for almost 70 years. And in terms of the hardware side of our business, we are probably the most trusted in the engineering community and others regarding our hardware. In addition, Simpson is investing in partnerships that are really innovative. It could be those companies like a Tecton or things like that to drive additional value to our end users. We might be experts in helping you along the journey, but we're certainly are those who we're investigating solutions every single day. And our unique position from our history allows us to have those unique relationships. We are also involved with a lot of digital within this business. And we are involved with componentry, and we are involved with equipment like the Easy Frame saw, right? So we have a full gamut where we can help you along the journey. And that's the message that we want to make sure that you know, is that we're here to help. I would challenge you to think a little bit differently about how you may be approaching it today. And if you're already approaching it that way, let's work together to take that next step in your journey.
We're gonna move right along. We're gonna move to Stephen.
My name's Stephen Keller. Been with MiTek for about a dozen years now. I'm a structural engineer by trade. Don't hold that against me. Focused more recently in the last 4 or so years on working with builders such as yourselves to help them hear the good word when it comes to offsite components. How many people are in the world of offsite right now? Use some type of trusses or wall panels?
Trusses?
Quick show of hands.
Okay, let's start easy. Trusses. Come on.
Roof trusses?
75% of all builders in the U.S. use trusses. Stuffed wall panels, doors, windows, electrical. Okay, so
modular?
Nobody's using cassettes. Nobody's using stuffed panels. It's actually a pretty good representation of the nation, right?
Exactly.
75% of builders use, roof trusses. And as soon as you drop the wall panels, it drops off, very substantially. And then you get to the stuffed panels, the stuff that you were showing. That seems to be this emerging technology that really isn't permeated the market yet.
For those of you that use trusses, which again was most of the audience here, you're probably familiar with MiTek. Most of the truss seals, whether floor trusses, roof trusses, come through MiTek engineering offices. We've got a large network of truss manufacturers, and most of you probably have gotten your trusses from, as well as wall panel manufacturers. We also have builder technologies similar to what Lincoln was talking about with Simpson, to help connect those digital twins and to solve it with the click of a mouse versus the saws out in the field. There's a reason you guys are in this room. It's because you want to make sure you're either convincing yourself you should be going down this way or finding that better way to sharpen your pencil and keep doing it more or faster, leaner, whatever it may be. When I talk about components, it could be anything from replacing that LVL with a 2-ply girder all the way up to, again, that modular unit. It doesn't have to be full modular. It can be a little bit more than just replacing that one traditional material, but obviously it should depend on what project you're working on there. It should be able to evolve with the needs, the challenges you're facing out in the field, as well as where you're building. There's a reason that we're seeing a lot more building up in Minnesota and the Northeast because of their build seasons versus down in Texas, things like that. We have a lot more labor availability as well as better weather in general. I grouped together a couple of different columns here. Speed and efficiency, of course, reducing build time. We talked about that taking that 100 days, 120 days, reducing that down. Looking at, again, weather independence. How many people here have walked through a truss manufacturing plant or a wall panel manufacturing plant? I'd say that's a great field trip to take you and your design team, or even your framing team, and just look at the different tools they have, different automation.
The new automated ones.
Exactly.
I talked to so many builders, and their vision still is it's 50 guys hand sawing wood and hammering these trusses together. Maybe it's better doing it under a cover on some kind of pallet or some kind of platform than it is out on the job site. But today's modern robotic manufacturing, these are CNC cut, automatic placement, laser control of geometries. I mean, the data you get out of here, the quality improvement is just phenomenal.
Down to a 1/16 of an inch. You've got again, half the people they're building them off-site versus the guys on-site. You'd be shocked at the enhancements in automation over the last even 10 years. If you've been to one component manufacturing plant, you've been to one component manufacturing plant. Everyone does it differently based off of what the needs are of their builder. So it's very cool, to go out there and form a really good partnership with that component manufacturer you have out there.
If somebody wanted to go do that, where would they find that list? How would they go find somebody that you would recommend to go see?
I would say for those of you that already are using trusses, reach out to your component manufacturer and just say, hey, we'd love to see how the sausages are made. Most of them are going to be very open to you coming in there. They'll set you up with their design team so you can talk about what details they love for you guys to use, what slows them down. But if you don't have that partner, reach out to I'll put my name out there. Feel free to talk to me afterwards. There's definitely folks in your region that we could partner you with. Let's jump to quality consistency. Again, we talked about precision manufacturing down to that 1/16 of an inch. Most of these are inside. We don't have any type of wind blowing it around. You don't have dust clogging up all your computers, things like that. And your inspections and quality assurance, most of these component manufacturers have some type of QA auditing system, as well as just better material control. I mean, it's a factory.
What is the material efficiency of a component factory, a truss or wall panel factory versus stick built? And what I mean by that, I get a big pallet of 2x4s, and I know because I used to be in this business, we have 2 to 3 20-foot dumpsters, right? We're hauling all this cut wood off to the dump. In your factories, you're reusing that wood, or what little scrap you have at the end, you're probably finger joining it and making it back into other good wood that you can sell and then do something with.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that's like less than, greater than like 1.5 feet is being reused for some type of floor tread or blocking. Yeah, exactly. The same house is being built next to each other, and this one's had to have the dumpster, empty 2 or 3 times.
So 2 problems. You paid for the material, and you paid to have it hauled off. I mean, you got 2 costs.
And the handling of, moving across.
So it has to affect eventually takeoffs, right? And, so we sit here and go, well, this house, here's what we have to order. But if you could order 5% less material, that matters, right?
We're all, with the caveat, we're all making an assumption that the panels would come out correct, right?
Yep.
Because there's been a huge problem in the industry in general over the last 5 to 8 years, right? Even with factory component manufactured labor. I mean, we spent, from a framer's perspective, we spent a lot of time, a lot of your money that wasn't budgeted for ripping panels apart that aren't built correctly.
You think a lot of that is this issue of 2D versus 3D and not having the digital twin? Because that is a huge problem, right? If you're dealing with 2D drawings and you try to go to panelization, then the panels aren't really right because the drawings aren't actually right. And The other problem is foundation pours, because we tend to actually build the structure to the foundation, not to the print.
Yeah.
Right? It is it's a way of system thinking. I come from the car industry and semiconductor industry, and then I became a builder, right? And you would never do that you would never build the chassis wrong and then rework the body to go on the chassis.
No.
Yeah, cars would cost $200,000. I mean, you can't do that.
What I found is, when the panels have gone wrong, or when they arrive at the job site, they're not expected to be designed a certain way. It's because the failure has been not involving the framer in that design process. It's been just the component manufacturers making some assumptions on this is probably how they want it. The framer gets out there and says, no, we would put these studs in this order here. So they rip it all out and they frame it their way. You ask 10 framers the best way to frame a house, you can get 10 different answers, and they're probably all right based off of their experience.
Yeah, the challenge is, for practical purposes, is you've got to align the systems. So you have to be thinking of the complete system, right? If and today the industry is still riddled. I remember Bill Pulte 25 years ago saying, guys, we've got to think about stacked framing, right? Got to think about aligning the members so that we carry the structure down, then you can reduce the amount of lumber in the wall. I think sometimes it gets lost kind of in the bidding process and in the hunting for the low price, where we've got one truss manufacturer, we've got a different wall panel manufacturer, and then we've got a different engineer designing the floor system. So I'm telling you, you can save the most amount of material and the most amount of money and make the least amount of mistakes if you can have all three of those systems designed in coordination.
Yeah.
So think about it from the bottom up or the top down, however you want to think about it. But we can use floor joists that are appropriately sized for both deflection and for for load, right? That are 24 inches on center. Our wall panels don't need to be 16 on center. Our wall vertical framing, they can be 12 on center, as long as your roof trusses are 24 on center, as long as they're 24 on center.
Right.
And we're aligning those, coming from a large purchasing supply chain, hunting for every penny background. Everybody has gone through that road before of buying those individual three pieces, and you're not saving the money. And I can tell you today that we just as soon stick frame a house than panel frame a house if the panel framer's not, if the panels aren't coming out right. And we're not going to charge more for it, because the labor's getting paid by the square foot on the house. And on a 2,500 square foot home, we don't pay any more to the labor to frame, stick frame, than the panel. So if you're thinking about the whole system, which is where we should be thinking, then it's got to be in alignment. Yep. And that's my piece from seeing both sides of it.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think Tim said it right too, where the advancement of technology, especially more builders moving to that 3D world and working with their framers, being able to verify that those studs do stack underneath some of those trusses there. We see it on multifamily projects all the time. It's just moving into the single family space. It's becoming more prevalent. One of the things that we've been very focused on, we do this with a lot of builders out there, is just doing apples to apples comparisons. Working with the builder to say, hey, let's just build 2 houses and let's just track all the data we can for it. The most important thing is, again, to start from design. We're going to build 2 houses, one traditionally, one with componentized solutions, wall panels, floor trusses, floor cassettes. Is anyone familiar with floor cassettes? Floor cassettes, think of it as a wall panel, but for your floor, you've got 5 floor trusses with the sheathing already applied, and that's installed as a bigger Lego block. A couple of things you'll notice right away is that you're using less labor when you're using the componentized solution versus the stick frame labor. That's less people that can get injured on a job site, less people that are having to touch the material on there. You don't have to find that 30-year framer that knows each way to do it, because you're able to have more of those decisions made again with the computer versus having them read the plans and then being able to frame it from there. You see a couple of the major savings that we have there looking at that first floor, the walls as well as the floor systems there. I think I saw most people were using, or like maybe half of the folks in here were using floor trusses versus a high joist dimensional. Not having to worry about your MEPs, cutting, drilling holes, things like that, which again, anytime you're eliminating saws, ladders, wires from the job site, it's a safer environment. So that's a big push in the component space.
And then the delay in the schedule because all the callbacks, because you did cut a hole in something, right? And then you got to go repair all that. I mean, come on, that's the classic on a job site.
And again, you can see just the overall time saved at the bottom there, 370 minutes versus 167. But the big thing is those callbacks, fixing those errors out in the field. You're seeing, I think it was about 50% less callbacks that you have, because again, yes, it's construction. Things are going to go wrong. Things aren't going to fit exactly. You're going to be able to come back out there and fix it. But, from a general framing perspective, a lot of those things are going to be figured out with the software. If there's any obstructions from a MEP perspective, those are going to be figured out again in the computer. You're going to be able to work with your contractors earlier on to solve those. So a couple of things I'll just say real quick. So how to start, again, discuss with your construction. You guys are here. That's the first step. That's great. Start talking more with your construction team, seeing what level of that componentization makes sense to them. Start working with your component manufacturers. Hey, we're doing trusses. Can you guys help us think more about if wall panels are going to be beneficial for us? Are they the right systems for our houses? Engage your local manufacturer too. Again, take those tours.
I'm Dennis Michaud, Managing Director of Offsite Solutions and CertainTeed. Real quick, a little bit about myself. I have a family. I like to fish. Been in the industry for a long time, specifically in offsite construction, but I've also been a builder. Basically, I was a contractor. I was a builder. Then I was frustrated, and I tried to look at ways to see if I could help other builders to see some of the benefits that we saw using offsite construction in different ways. Saint-Gobain's the parent company. CertainTeed is the brand that you may be familiar with. High level on that, we've been around for a while. We've got a lot of different materials that we bring to the market. The important thing I would say is that we're also seeing the way that everyone is building, not just in the United States, but also globally. We benefit from that visibility of seeing what's going on in Germany, what's going on in Japan, what's going on in Scandinavia, UK, and other parts of the world.
And when it comes to panelization, a lot more is going on in the rest of the world than is going on in the United States, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So that's a really neat insight to bring forward.
We hired a company to go out and talk with a lot of different builders, really local and regional builders. So these are not the nationals. And we asked them, we did 2 studies actually. First, tell us who you are, and then tell us how often you see labor shortages, schedule delays, and budget overruns. We went back, same group, and they didn't know it was coming from the same place and said it's an anonymous survey. Really, how often do you show up at a job and the labor isn't there? How often do you deliver a job late? How often projects go over? And we got these numbers. If Ford published this, the National Home Builder published this in their annual report, that'd be a scary thing. At the same time, it's not like there isn't work to do, right? Almost 4 million unit housing shortage in the US, getting worse year over year. So there's plenty of work out there. Okay, right now, market's a little strange with the rates, et cetera, but fundamentally, there's a lot more homes that could be built. We've kind of gone over all of these so far. The reduced time, I like to think of it as budget control. If you're building a $3 million home, maybe you don't care about saving $5,000, but you really care that $3 million doesn't become 3.5. Or if it's a $200,000, $250,000, $420,000 home, maybe every dollar does matter in that case, and you really want to know exactly what it'll cost. Year-round productivity, so I'm from up north, that's why I talk fast. But as long as you have the foundation in, you can be building year-round if you're using offsite components, especially if it's the more enhanced types of offsite, the enhanced panels or modular, and then ultimately building more with less. I don't think it's a question of how do we hire less people. There's a gap of at least 400,000 labor gap in the US right now. So it's really how do we build as much as we're currently building with less people. You all are probably very familiar with the image on the far left and the image on the far right. We've been talking a lot about the far right, panels and trusses, very common. And then manufactured homes, that's not at all what I'm talking about, not because I don't like it. We have a lot of customers who manufacture mobile homes, 140,000 mobile homes built annually in the US, so it's not small. It's those middle two that we've discussed a little bit less. So modular, also called 3D volumetric. By the way, in Europe and the rest of the world, they call all of this modular. Go figure. And then advanced panelization. So these are panels that have usually at least insulation, some cases windows, doors, membranes, siding, etc. So some myths about offsite construction. One myth is built to a lower building code. Everything except for manufactured housing has to be built to the local building code. This is, from structure all the way up to MEPs and even finishes. Reduces design flexibility. Really what that comes down to is how big is your component? Yes, if you're building a 1,500 square foot house, it made boxes that are 60 feet long by 16 feet wide. All right, it's going to kind of look like 2 boxes stuck together. But if you're building that same house with panels that can be as small as 2 feet long, and maybe dormers modularized, You have a lot of design flexibility in that case. Not eligible for the same financing. In the single family world, we hear this over and over. I can't get a mortgage if it's a modular home, or I can't get a mortgage if it's a panelized home. From the perspective of the banks and from the perspective of, really everyone else after you turn over the keys, that house is exactly the same. And there's construction financing. There is a piece that you do have to take into consideration. You can still get the same construction financing, but it's happening a lot faster. So you need to prepare your bank basically to be writing those checks a little bit quicker than they used to. Actually, offsite construction kind of began in the US in the 50s in the world. And I like to tell my colleagues in Europe, like, actually, we started it. We do a lot more of it than they do. It's just mostly on the low end on manufactured housing. It's been around for a while. Obviously, it's a lot more prevalent in the these more kind of advanced forms of offsite are more prevalent in Japan or in Germany or in Scandinavia. But still, you'll see some numbers in a moment of how frequently we see offsite happening in single family residential in the U.S. What I did here is I took the NAHB national average numbers. These are published. You might not know that the average home builder in the U.S. home builder is doing 6 houses a year. So there's a lot of really small home builders, and looked at what are the impacts of what happens if you can get to market before your competition. What is your pricing power if you're the first in that community, first in that area to get in when people are hungry for housing? What does it mean if you can build 2x the number of homes, whether you're currently doing 300, 700, or 6, and you can do 2x of that with your same team size? And of course, we talked about financing. If the construction takes you half the time, you're only paying half the interest. And that does have a big impact. Simple math, it turns out into about 1.6x net profit versus the NAHB average. We talked about waste, talked about the cost of waste, talked about injuries. We didn't so much talk about theft. I don't know if that's an issue in your markets. It is in ours. And you have a lot of materials out there. You have tools. People can come and grab them. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. If you start with an enclosed box or enclosed envelope that's built of panels that you can lock the door, it's a lot less waste.
It's easy to run away with a few sheets of OSB. It's really hard to load up a cassette in the back of your pickup truck.
See people stealing wallpaper.
Yeah,
And then less of that, less a work in process. I mean, I come from manufacturing now. I guess I come from manufacturing, and the longer you have something being made or built, the more that can go wrong. And you're tied up working capital. That's a debt on your books. It's a liability on your books. So how common is prefabrication, enhanced panels, and modular? Looked at the different regions. So Northwest Central, if you're from that area, congratulations, you're winning. 1 in 10 homes built this way. If you're from down here, maybe it's easy to build in Texas. I don't know.
Well, it has to do with the fact that 65% of our labor in Texas is undocumented, right? So you've had an incredibly large supply of very inexpensive labor, right? So that's kind of, led into the formula of how Texas builders have built, but that's changing by the minute.
What should you expect when working with an offsite manufacturer? And here I'm speaking more on the modular and enhanced panels. First, it's going to be a little bit different experience maybe than working with your typical subs. There are some very professional subs. I know that you were part of one of them, but not all of them are that way. You can expect to be presented with options and standards. I highly recommend that you pick your offsite partner by the standards that they use. Because if you try to change those, and a lot of them will say, yeah, okay, we normally use this type of insulation or this type of window, but we'll do whatever you want. If that is not really the case and they're just trying, you're not going to get these benefits. So pick them based on their standards and whether you like their options. Cost clarity over cost reduction. So there are some manufacturers you can work with that are going to make your project a lot less expensive. There are others that will just, meet what you're currently doing. The important thing is to expect that what the price they tell you is what they bill you at the end. I'm not going to say that offsite is higher quality. I think it's easier to achieve higher quality when you're indoors and you're working on a table or there's a robot that's doing some of the work. But I've seen some really good quality be executed out in the field. I think what's different with offsite construction is you can get repeatable quality at a very high speed, regardless of who's actually swinging the hammer. One caveat I'll say with modular and advanced panels, expect for that foundation to be what's called an engineered foundation. You're probably not going to use a typical means and methods foundation, because they will have requirements that you'll have to meet.
Yeah, plus or minus 2 inches from corner to corner.
Right.
Still requires modification of panels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you get the most benefits in offsite? So first, understand what matters to you. If it's really cost, then pick the fabricator based on that. If it's something else, there are a lot of varieties and different fabricators, and tell them what matters. If it's really important to you that you have a certain level of finish, make sure they understand that, because usually they're repeating the same level of quality on every job. And if they don't quite get you, it might not be a success. Engage them early in the process. So once you've picked the manufacturer you want to use, give them a seat at the planning table. Introduce them to your other subs, your consultants. Make sure everyone's on board. We see constantly, this sub, the HVAC sub, or the electrician is button heads with the offsite manufacturer, and this person did this, and yada yada, and I'm behind it. Get everyone on the same page. Make sure to understand their timelines, and I would say be realistic about what you can deliver. Whether it's framed wall panels or trusses, or it's modular. When they say it's going to be there, it'll probably be there then. If the foundation isn't ready, it'll cost you money. And finally, we all care about cost. I think we care about speed, but also consider this in the terms of risk reduction and overall profitability. Sort of been a motif in what we've been talking about, that it's not just about how much does that framing cost me, or how much does that roof cost. It's really how profitable can I be at the end of this. To give an example, shameless plug, we do have this system we call One Precision Assemblies. This is one of the few examples of enhanced panels or advanced panelization in the US right now. You see what it looks like in the factory. It takes about a week, gets delivered, it's installed in about a week. We've done it in a couple days. We've done it in multifamily in a couple weeks. Just to prove the point that not all the design needs to look the same when you're using prefab. A lot of examples, most of these are single family. The builder comes to, in this case, us with their design. We execute exactly to their design. It doesn't need to look prefab. So with 0 time left, I'll leave this on the screen with some key takeaways.
So Mike, we got to get these guys on the way.
Yeah, right.
To our audience there.
Yep. No, so my advice to you, if you're willing to accept it, would be keep in mind it's an evolution, not a revolution, and don't get freaked out by, should we go to SIP panels or advanced framing, advanced panels or Tecton right this minute. Think of it as an evolution, not a revolution. And if you do one thing, get your truss, your floor joist, your panel manufacturer, your framer, and your superintendent all together at a meeting. Have a little mini symposium and say, look, here's our goal, is to reduce material, right? And make things easier. And your cost savings, even if they're not willing to give it to you that minute, the framer, for example, will come over time once they believe.